In Dataverse, you can register a catalog of events so that Power Platform can respond to what's happening in your enterprise systems. Today, Jared Hall shows how citizen developers and pro devs can trigger cloud flows or even code off of events across your organization. Today on PowerCat Live. Welcome to PowerCat Live. My name is Phil Topness with the PowerCat team, and today I'm here with Jared Hall, Principal Program Manager. Hey, Jared.
Hey, Phil. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Now, before we start talking about Dataverse business events, talk a little bit about how you got into this role and your path through Microsoft.
Yeah, so I've been at Microsoft for about 15 years and always in Dynamics. I started on the Dynamics GP team, then moved over to Business Central, Dynamics 365 Human Resources, and now onto the Dataverse platform side.
And possibly a little bit of a spoiler for the feature you're going to show us. So what is this feature?
Yeah, so what we're talking about is business events. So a lot of the functionality that you have across your applications, you integrate data, but for this feature that we're talking about integrating business logic, that when actions happen in other applications, we have other integrating applications that want to know about that activity. And this is a way for us to understand what that action is and how we can use it across platforms, across applications, and across organizations.
And so I think that's important. We're going to be talking about Dataverse, but you're talking about events that happen anywhere in the ecosystem that we're working in.
Yes, anything in your ecosystem that needs to communicate an event across your portfolio of applications, it can happen through Dataverse.
So can you show us how we'd implement this or how it works?
We're in Power Automate, and we have an event that happens in an external application. Let's just use the example of an account getting approved in our external application. And we have other applications that want to know when that event occurs. So if we come into Power Automate and create a new flow, we can give it a name, and we have two Dataverse triggers. We'll say when an action is performed.
Yeah.
And this trigger gives us the ability to see a catalog of events. And for this, I've created a catalog called Contoso Manufacturing. And we have a category that can break it down into additional categorized events within that catalog. And then we have actions. And I've created a custom API in Dataverse that represents that action of a customer account being approved. And it has some request parameters that gives me the customer name. And anytime that action happens in my external application, it'll send that event into Dataverse and now trigger this flow to trigger whatever business logic I need to have happen after that event occurs. So it's integrating business logic across platforms through Power Automate and creating that catalog as a list that any citizen developer can then come in here and start creating a Power Automate flow against that event occurring in another system.
Yeah, that is really interesting, right? Because this is a trigger, not the one we're all used to going to, which operates when a row changes or when a record changes. So how did you populate that list of that catalog?
That's a great question. Let's go take a look and see what that looks like in a solution. So if we look at our solutions, I've created just that demo custom API. It's a simple event representing that action of a customer being approved in an external system. Once we come into the solution, one thing we have to do is create a catalog. We have a top-level catalog for this solution, and then we can break that down into categorized catalogs. So we can categorize however many events we need to, and helps us organize within this solution. We then create the custom API and assign it to that catalog. So the custom API itself, these are pretty straightforward to create. On the new menu, we would say more, other, and custom API. From there, we can create new custom API input parameters and response parameters associated with that custom API, which are the inputs and outputs of what will happen when you invoke that API or with that business event. And then create a catalog assignment to assign that to the catalog. So what that looks like for our example of approving a customer account, once this was created new, we just assigned a few properties, assign a binding type, and if we want to invoke from a plugin, we can, but this is also available through the OData API for Dataverse. So we can invoke it directly through the API as well. Then from related, we can look at our request parameters that were created. We have a request ID and an account name, which is the account that this is being approved for. So when Contoso Electronics gets approved, that gets passed as an input parameter, and that event gets sent out to whoever's listening to this event and subscribed against this event to know that that activity happened and trigger whatever business logic we need to. So that's what we were looking at in Power Automate.
I definitely see how this would be easier for citizen developers then to be able to put a trigger in and be able to look through the catalog. A lot of this, though, like responding to an API, couldn't I do that already with Power Automate and Custom Connector or something like that?
You could. So a lot of this functionality was available in Power Automate, but this opens up more possibilities for that citizen developer. It gives opportunities for external applications to create that catalog so it's all categorized and easily listed. You have all of those events available. Let's look at one example of that, actually. Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations uses the custom API to synchronize their catalog of business events into the Power Platform. So if we look at the solution that's created by Finance and Operations in the Microsoft Dynamics 365 ERP Virtual Entities solution and look at Custom API, we see the list of all of the business events in the Finance and Operations Business Events catalog are synchronized into Power Platform. This makes it available then for any citizen developer to go into Power Automate, have this list of business events already available to them to trigger business events actions. In addition to that, Finance and Operations has new data events. So any cut event, your create, update, and delete operations that occur against any virtual table in the system can be registered here to show up as a data event to trigger a Power Automate.
Yeah, that's a great example. So clearly this is designed with enterprises in mind. So Jared, you talked about the citizen developer angle for this. What about pro devs? This enterprise integration must be useful for pro devs too.
Yeah, absolutely. Pro developers have the opportunity to register plugins against these events as well. It's available in the plugin registration tool, also in the Power Platform Tools add-in for Visual Studio. So if we go into Visual Studio and you've created a new project using the Power Platform Tools add-in, this whole catalog of business events from the custom API catalog in Dataverse is available for you to register plugins against these events. So for example, if we're looking at finance and operations, the Contoso manufacturing catalog is the approve event that we looked at earlier, but the entire catalog of finance and operations business events is here as an example. So vendor table activities can happen against this. So this would be the create, update, and deleted operations that can happen against those tables. If we look at accounts receivable, we see activities like free text invoice posted. So when that event happens in that external system, that notification gets sent into Dataverse, and we can trigger a plugin based on that. So when we create this project, there's some boilerplate code that gets created for us. And a quick example of that event happening with a free text invoice being posted, if there's something that we want to happen based on that event, we can use this boilerplate code that gets created by the plugin to get our execution context, connect to our iOrganization service, and then run some code to, in this case, update a customer account balance when that invoice gets posted. So there's activities that can happen across your applications, across Dataverse, across organizations and platforms based on an event that happens in your external system, integrating through Dataverse.
Yeah, that does give you a lot of flexibility to be able to write plugins against this. So where do you go from here? What's next for this feature?
We have a lot of interesting things in store for business events in the future. One of them that we're really excited about is the opportunity to do process analysis. When you think about business events in the context of your organization, those business events are just data points in an end-to-end business process. So if you look at your procure to pay scenarios, end-to-end process, or order to cash, or a hire to retire scenario, there's a lot of business documents that are associated with those. But just on those documents themselves, there's so many activities of approvals and postings and payments that can happen against them. And each of those is a data point in your overall business processes. And there's a huge opportunity for us to use business events as we're sending these events to persist those in a persisted data store of a sequential series of events in an end-to-end process. So then we can use a tool like Power Automate's Process Advisor to look at that process, see how long are these processes taking? Where are the bottlenecks? How do I optimize these? What are the KPIs associated with these business processes? And all of that additional analysis that's lit up because we have a persisted end-to-end sequential series of events in a data store underneath the powerful tools of Power Automate to look at that event.
What a clever use of having all that data. That's really interesting. And so if someone's watching this, they want to try business events for themselves, where do they go?
We have some documentation that'll be in the links below. We encourage people to go read the documentation, and please try it out and let us know. Provide feedback, because we want to make improvements on this in the future and make sure that this is something that works for your organizations.
Jared, thanks so much for taking the time to show this.
Thank you, Phil.
Now, before you go, we are making new videos every week. Click this Microsoft logo to subscribe, and you'll be the first to see them. And look over here for a couple of videos that can make you a Power Platform expert.